Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the WTF1 podcast, the final post-quali podcast edition. Let's call it that. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the final PQP with Sebastian Vettel in. And it's very, very sad, is it not, Tommy, the WTF1 founder? Abu Dhabi Day is the final Grand Prix weekend of the year, which, of course, we could go into an hour podcast just on why that shouldn't be the case. But here we are. We're going to talk about what happened in qualifying.
Indeed.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to say anything.
I just didn't expect you to pause there.
That's fine, Tommy. I just wanted to throw you off, to be honest with you. Twitch are also saying hello. If you don't follow us already, WTF1 official. If you want to watch our watch-alongs, which we've just come off the back of qualifying. Of course, we've got the race tomorrow as well. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the 2023 changes that Formula One announced yesterday. So lots of exciting things to talk about. So I'm looking forward to it. But first and foremost, let's run through qualifying and what happened. Not as controversial or crazy as some qualifying sessions, i.e.
we didn't get
Brazil.
Haas on pole.
No K-Mag on pole.
No.
We were hoping for an Aston Martin on pole for this particular weekend, but some of the drivers did not get the memo, including Max Verstappen. But we will start with Q1, and it was K-Mag, Pierre Gasly, Valtteri Bottas, Alex Albon, and Nicholas Latifi out in Q1. Now, one of my podcast predictions is Nicholas Latifi will not finish last on the road. He almost out-qualified Alex Albon. I have to say, Nicky looking good in this final race for Williams, and I'm fully vibing with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he did all right. Williams, not looking in great form. They looked quite quick in FP3, but like we discussed on our watch-along, Abu Dhabi is a strange one because essentially, like your Singapores and other night races, you're running in conditions that aren't representative at all in the earlier practice sessions because we're used to, it's at night, so it's completely different. And that was definitely apparent through much of the order, to be honest, which we'll go into later.
Certainly was. Another couple of drivers that maybe was a little bit shocking for us was Gasly and Bottas both out in Q1, although if my stats serve me correctly, this is Pierre Gasly's 7th Q1 exit this year, which is pretty catastrophic from the AlphaTauri team. They are definitely the team that have gone the most backwards of all the teams this year. And Gasly in particular, probably one of the drivers that has been the most disappointing as well from a performance aspect, and also comparing to his teammate. Tsunoda starts 12th tomorrow and Gasly down in 17th.
Yeah, shocking from Gasly. He's had a lot of Q1 exits, like you say, and it feels worse the fact that he was the star of qualifying last year. Has to be said. He put in so many performances where he was up there in like P6, P7. Same with the year before as well. He'd done some brilliant performances, and we were singing his praises. But yeah, not a great performance again. In qualifying, and Bottas as well. Think where Alfa Romeo were at the start of the season, and well, you look at two people there actually. Magnussen and Bottas were probably two of the stars of the first race, really, in terms of Alfa Romeo and Haas were right at the back in 2021, and we got into that new season in Bahrain, and it was like, oh my word, Bottas is there racing the Mercs. Magnussen's best of the rest. What's going on? But 16th and 18th is shockingly bad.
Yes, obviously K-Mag last time out was pole sitter, which we have to mention because it wasn't a pipe dream. And also going back to Gasly very quickly, I guess it also brings up a debate around, is he actually going to be better than Ocon when he moves over to Alpine? Ocon has been the sort of silent assassin this year, I'd say, which is picking up points, picking up decent quality results. He starts 8th tomorrow and out-qualifies Alonso. It was very touch and go between the two in both Q1 and Q2, but still, Ocon's been doing very, very well, and it has to pose the question, is Gasly actually going to be a match for Ocon coming into a new team as well?
Yeah, well, it could be a very interesting situation with Gasly. I think it'd be the biggest test of how good he really is, because we've seen him go up against Max Verstappen, which a lot of people have and not done very well. So it's tough to know how good he is. But then him being demoted, he was obviously brilliant, like we said, putting in some amazing performances. But then was that just Tsunoda being bad in his rookie season and getting used to Formula One? Because now Tsunoda's outqualified Gasly a lot more than I expected him to this year, that's for sure.
And that's coming from a Yuki fanboy as well, as yourself. So that's Q1. Q2, Alonso, Tsunoda, Schumacher, Stroll, and Zhou were the 5 to go out there. Obviously, Alonso was probably a bit of a surprise. We'd expect him to make it through to Q3, especially as his teammate made it through. Tsunoda did a good job, I'd say, in comparison to his teammate. Schumacher outqualified Magnussen as well. So decent from him, considering as well the news came out that he will not be racing for Haas and it will be Nico Hülkenberg. And you could almost tell as well, it wasn't very sort of PR bubbly what he came out with. It was quite a lot of emotion in his message, wasn't there? Where it was like, really disappointed, almost, lack of understanding maybe that of why he's lost his seat. It wasn't very much just like oh, thanks so much for the opportunity, Haas. Bye. There's clearly some bitter feelings there, and it's a relationship that's well and truly broken down.
Yeah, it has. Mick, got the better of Magnussen. So could be feeling happy about that, but yeah, he's not had the whole Hulkenberg thing we've spoken about. But it's a shame that Schumacher's lost his drive. But I wouldn't be surprised if he did come back. He'll want to obviously just hope that he gets one over on Magnussen to sort of, like you say, if he is feeling a little bit bitter, it could be a kind of go out on a high and, oh, well, look, see, you dropped the wrong driver. But yeah, Schumacher, surprisingly good, actually. 13th. No, looking at the grid, I think Tsunoda and Schumacher have done pretty well there to get 12th and 13th.
Yeah, I think so as well. Decent performances from the pair of them.
And shocking from Alonso. Sorry. Hurts me, but yeah,
he didn't seem particularly bothered, though. Obviously, we had that. There was an interview that went out around before qualifying, and he was being interviewed alongside Ocon, and they were speaking about him leaving the team, and he was saying, "Oh, I miss the guys, etc., etc." Then Ocon just went, "Lies. You said that you're happy to leave," or something like that, in a kind of a jokey manner, but also bit hard, like a bit like
baited him massively.
Yeah, big baits. And then Alonso just turns around and goes, "Yeah, I am happy to leave," and sort of says he's looking forward to a more competitive car. So I feel like it will not bother Alonso one bit that he is anywhere in the race, unless he was going to win or had a chance to win. I don't think he really cares where he ends up in this final race with Alpine. And then finally Q3, Verstappen, Perez locking out the front row in the Red Bull. And then second row, Leclerc and Sainz, Hamilton and Russell. So it's the 2x2. Then you have Lando Norris, of course, starting 7th. Who else really at this stage? Really, it's just Lando putting in performance after performance, and only a couple of tenths off George Russell in 6th. Then it's Ocon, Vettel, and then Danny Rick making it through to Q3, doing a good job in potentially his last race as well. Things to talk about: Verstappen gave Perez the toe, even though in the first run he was supposed to as well, but his car wasn't ready, and we were all thinking, not ready,
what's going on here?
But then gave the toe the second time as well. But Perez, I felt like Perez maybe left a little bit on the table there. Felt like there was a small little bottle job there from Perez. He seemed like he had the pace. He made that big mistake on his first Q3 run, which would have lost him a handful of time, and then just couldn't seem to really get back the feeling in the car, it seems.
Yeah, the first run, Perez looked like he had the better of Verstappen, and then it was like, oh God, he's made a big mistake going into the final corner. It looked like he might even lose a place to one of the Ferraris. But no, Verstappen had the better of him despite giving him the toe. And of course, Verstappen going around that final corner as well with his car easily within the white lines, cleared up a lot of screenshots we would have been seeing probably on Twitter of his first run, where it looked extremely marginal if he'd have done it. But the second run very much was easily within track limits. And one thing we spoke about before we started this on our Twitch stream was very amusing from Red Bull that it very much the radio seemed to be like, great job from the team there, and they're really kind of pushing this. Yeah, look, well done from the team, good teamwork. After what happened in Brazil,
happy families, woohoo!
However, those two starting on the front row tomorrow, what are they going to do there? Does Perez go for it? Do we see a repeat of last year? I mean, imagine if Perez gets the lead and then we see a Verstappen dive bomb into the chicane like we did last year.
Into turn 5 again. Yeah, that would be quite something, wouldn't it?
But it's quite a tasty grid, which I think a lot of people would maybe say, oh, it's probably the most boring order you could possibly have, Verstappen, Perez, and Leclerc. But the fact that Verstappen maybe wants to help Perez, we don't know. Perez and Leclerc going for P2 in the title. They're next to each other on the grid. Fingers crossed. Let's stay positive. Come on, please, Abu Dhabi. Give us a good race.
Verstappen's got a role to play, though, hasn't he? If he is a true team player right now, and maybe Perez and Leclerc are quite comparable in race pace, Verstappen has to somehow be able to help Perez. If they're truly going to be trying to fight for this P2 like they said they would, and trying to get this Red Bull 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship, Verstappen can't really, as a teammate, just clear off. Because
I guess
that then... I mean, in a realistic, he's a driver and he probably will just drive off and win the race. And that's absolutely fine because that is within his rights to do that. But also, if you're thinking, okay, is he going to do everything he can to try and help Perez? Because if that's the case, he lets Perez go and Verstappen plays, rear gunner, because then that's the buffer that ideally Perez would want. But I don't think it's fair to expect that from Max.
No, I don't think giving up a win is very different to giving up, the result at the end. And also, we've got to think that the results at the moment, they're level on points. So what realistically can Max do? I think it would have been a lot more fascinating, say Perez was a few points behind, and say the order we're in now still wouldn't have given Perez that P2 in the title, but him being let through by Max would have given him P2. That would have been extremely spicy and very interesting to see what they'd have done. However, obviously, if it's in the order they are now, it doesn't really matter. Verstappen can win the race and they don't even need to tell him to move because Perez finishing second still secures him P2 in the title. So I guess
what does Verstappen do as well? This is all hypothetical scenarios, but I quite enjoy thinking about all the different ways it could play out. If Leclerc jumps Perez and goes into P2, Perez P3, what does Verstappen do then? Does Verstappen then try and do what Hamilton did to Rosberg and back them into the rest of them? Like it is
that seems. See, for me, it's for me that just seems absolutely ridiculous. I can see why Hamilton did it when the world championship is on the line, but Verstappen backing the entire field up so his teammate can finish P2 in the title for me seems like that's a stretch too far. But this is coming from me who, I've said multiple times, I don't really get the hype for P2 in the title. I'm very much one of these people that think it's the first loser. Like, it's not a vice champion that some people think.
It is the vice champion, actually, Tommy. If Charles Leclerc wins, I will be absolutely shouting it from the hilltops that Charles Leclerc is the vice champion of the world.
Okay. But for me, P2, it's one of those things. Though. I think it'd be nice, but I don't think it warrants Verstappen maybe doing some absolutely insane driving and doing what Perez did to Hamilton last year or what Hamilton did to Rosberg that time, just for the sake of something that's like, oh, that's kind of nice. They finished 1-2 in the title.
Yeah, but then I guess I'm going to put the question on the flip side here. And okay, to you, Tommy, as a Max Verstappen, two-time champion of the world fan, P2 means nothing. However, the damage that was done from Brazil, the teammate fracture there between Perez and Verstappen was clear as day to see. If P2 means a lot to Perez, we can't take that away from him. We can't say that it doesn't mean anything to him. If he wants to finish second, then that's what he would feel like. Does Verstappen almost think, well, is this worth me trying to patch things up with Perez before we go into the new season? Is that not a more mature approach? If Sergio has said to him, yeah, P2 is something I really want and I would like your help in any which way possible. because then you'd almost see that as an investment for the future from an emotional side of things, where you go, well, Max will go, well, yeah, I helped you a little bit in Abu Dhabi, didn't I? And did whatever. Now, I'm not saying you should give away the victory. Now that's extreme. But
it also won't do anything, will it? If it's in that situation.
So. Well, no, sorry, not give away the win necessarily, but put his win in jeopardy.
Put his win in jeopardy by backing the field up. Yeah. It's a tough call, but he's kind of put him in a position where it's not a lot he can do, really, in terms of the title. Like, so it is difficult because realistically, Perez has to beat Leclerc on his own terms now. The only way I can see it, which is that where Max could actually help him, is if, say, Perez, there's a late safety car. Sorry to bring that up at Abu Dhabi, and a late safety car. Perez maybe is on like a worldy strategy or something and is coming through the field, and Verstappen, don't hold him up because Perez needs to race after Leclerc or something. Then yeah, I think he'd get out the way then. But realistically from P1, what can Max do? I don't know. Be fascinating to see though.
We'll have to wait and see, won't we? Even though there's hardly anything to play for, we're still trying to hype up P2 in the championship.
I think I'm more interested just to see how they race each other on that first lap.
And also, we're saying like, P2 in the championship. We also need to not forget that there are two Mercedes of Hamilton and Russell that have not notoriously, but been known for their decent race pace and good with their tyres and things like that this year. And their fight with Ferrari. Ferrari, of course, crucially ahead of them on the grid, and they're 19 points ahead are Ferrari as well. So Hamilton and Russell need to outscore Leclerc and Sainz by 20 points or more, because on countback, Ferrari have more wins than Mercedes do this year. So that'll be another fascinating battle to keep an eye on as well, won't it?
It will, but it's surprising Mercedes have sort of gone back to where they were before. You can say it's the high altitude or whatever. They've got an extremely draggy car, but they've gone back to sort of that 5th and 6th where they seem very far off Ferrari. But I wouldn't be surprised when it comes to the race if they're a lot better on their tyres and show more race pace. That's the theme that we've seen through a lot of the season. Had a very, if you're a Ferrari fan, a very scary message from Charles Leclerc in FP3 where he said the soft tyres lasted 4 corners.
So we won't be seeing the soft tyres tomorrow then. That's essentially... Yeah. Do not expect to see the Ferraris have those red-walled tyres on the start, and if they do, then I'll start screaming during our race watch along. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too scared as a Mercedes fan that they're suddenly way worse than Ferrari. I think that's just how the season's gone, that they haven't been there in qualifying. But I wouldn't put it past it being Mercedes back to being the second best car when it comes to actually the Grand Prix.
We'll have to wait and see tomorrow. So now we're going to briefly touch upon the statement that came out from the Formula One Commission meeting.
We've not talked about Sebastian Vettel somehow.
Oh yeah. How have we not done that?
Literally, it's because we've hyped him up so much in the quali. All we talked about through the whole quali watch along was Sebastian Vettel.
But this is a separate podcast, and we haven't technically, for people listening just to the podcast. So I apologize. We have been hyping up Sebastian Vettel the entire quali watch along, and okay, it is worth speaking about as well. My apologies to all Seb Vettel fans out there. P9 on the grid, an unbelievable performance in the Aston Martin. We did not expect the Aston to be making it through to Q3. I don't think anyone would have expected that. Stroll was down in 14th, Vettel in 9th, and comfortably, I would say, got through the first 2 parts of qualifying. And then, stuck at 9th, was a 10th and a bit off Ocon, a couple of tenths off Norris, just about ahead of Danny Rick, and Seb can maybe score some points in his final race, which is more than I think anyone expected.
Yeah, to get through into Q3 in that Aston Martin is brilliant. Such a great performance, and he was just on it in qualifying. He was comfortably quicker than Stroll, and in some of the sessions, late on, he was putting it sort of like P5, P6, and we're like, oh my god, he's gonna do this. So awesome from Vettel. and just fingers crossed for a good race, please. Because that would be great to see. Him starting 9th, just, you can't expect much from him in that Aston Martin, but if you look at races like America and things like that, it'd just be great to see Seb doing a bit of like wheel-to-wheel racing and putting on a nice show, even if he only finishes 8th or 9th. Let's have some good battles.
Let's have some points. Please, car, be good for Sebastian Vettel tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Okay, shall we move on to the Formula One Commission meeting statement
now? Yeah, go on then.
Wow, you seemed hesitant.
Well, I was going to put one more Perez Verstappen scenario into the mix.
Go on then. Let's carry on the hypothetical nature of this podcast.
If you're Perez, I just want to throw this, and it will be interesting to see what you and everyone thinks. After what happened in Brazil, are you now just as determined to beat Verstappen in the race than you are beating Leclerc for P2 in the title? Is he more fueled by actually sending it on Verstappen on lap 1 and trying to beat Max? Or is he, or do you think it's more like he'll just settle and go, no, I need to beat Leclerc here? I think he'll go for it at the start.
I think he would love to beat Verstappen, of course, after everything that went on, and just generally, of course, your teammate winning the world title, it's gonna hurt a tiny bit. But I don't think he'll do anything stupid. I don't think he'll be willing to send it and potentially crash into his teammate and hand a Ferrari 1-2 over. Now, I think an element of him will go, I want to beat him down towards turn 1. If not, I don't think he's going to do anything silly. And, the running trend of this year has been that Verstappen's been better in the race than Perez has. So realistically, they will work out a plan, I'm sure, behind closed doors before we go racing tomorrow. But yeah, I'm sure it will also solve a few problems as well, because then the question is, does Verstappen race Perez if Perez gets ahead of his teammate on the first lap? Plenty of questions. What about you, Tommy? What do you think?
I think he'll at least have a go on the first lap, and then maybe settle down. But it'd be good, wouldn't it? I'd love to see the Red Bull statement if they ploughed into the side of each other on lap 1. After
as a team, we made a mistake.
As a team, we made a mistake. The call came too late to Perez to not plough into the side of Verstappen, and we apologise.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. Let's do this blooming 2023 changes now, shall we?
Yes. Okay.
Here we go. Right. So F1 released a statement yesterday on a few things that they are looking to change. We'll just talk about the interesting ones because there are a
lot of boring things as always.
Yeah. So there's a wet weather update. I'm just going to read to you what it says on the Formula One website. Driver feedback has suggested that there's been reduced visibility in extremely wet conditions with this latest generation of cars, which is a key determinant on determinant? Is that? I thought it was
it's just FIA language, isn't it?
On starting or needing to suspend sessions. So essentially what they're going to do is a study focused on developing the bodywork, which they try to basically suppress the tyre spray from running in wet conditions by use of minimal bodywork over the wheels, the wheel arches. So yeah, they're trying to make wet weather a bit more manageable, so then they don't have to fly a red flag every single second. And also, do they mention any work on the actual wet tyres?
Nope, no, not one bit. Which is exactly my thought as well. Yeah,
would be like a thing they need to make mandatory is teams have to do wet weather running whenever possible.
Yeah, that was my first reaction, seeing that statement where it's like, we're going to try and use the wheel brows to deflect spray and do all this fancy stuff. And I was like, or just have wet tyres that work, because we saw when it was mandatory that they started on wets, they could run in pretty appalling conditions round one of the most treacherous and difficult tracks in the wet. And they did fine on the wet tyres. So it's almost like, make the wet tyres work. But at least they're trying to do something, and they've listened to the drivers in terms of visibility. So
absolutely. Another thing is grid and power unit penalties. So they are continuing to discuss this, but essentially they have made the decision or made an analysis there that it's not a big enough penalty, and that some teams are literally just taking a whole host of big old fancy upgrades. For example, if for example a driver needs to change one particular part of their engine, the team will then just go, well, let's just take a whole batch. Let's just take a bit of everything, and then that therefore leads to more cost, which is exactly what they're trying not to have in Formula One. So I wonder what they'll come up with that, to be honest.
It's a difficult one though, because
every
team,
constructors championship points or something. But...
yeah, maybe just every team it's been happening for the last 6 years or whatever now, that they all know that Monza is the one. Just you might as well do it there, or Spa, for example. That's the place where you can overtake and get all your power unit things out the way. And Max Verstappen showed, I know it's Max Verstappen, so it's a bit different, but that it was barely a penalty, was it? From 14th, just stick a new engine in and fly through the field and sorted.
Or Hamilton in Brazil last year.
Hamilton in Brazil as well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they are continuing to work on that to figure out what the penalties should be. Another thing is that, well, if you hadn't heard already, tyre blankets is something that they were planning to get rid of for 2024. And they have basically delayed any final decisions on whether they're going to do that or not until July 2023. So they're trying to figure out whether it's actually
definitely won't do that.
Yeah, a feasible thing to do, as much as I think it could.
I would like to see it.
Interesting stuff. So there's that. I think this one's one of the most interesting ones in terms of racing, and that's DRS activation. So they're going to turn it on a lap earlier in the races, and also sprint races, or following a safety car restart as well. So the safety car restart was usually 2 laps, wasn't it? And now it's going to be 1, as far as I am aware. I don't think it's 3 after a safety car. I'm pretty sure it's 2. That's my understanding.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. But a lap earlier is much better, because I do agree that that's the best part. And watching as a fan, it is frustrating that when you see that safety car restart, they're all bunched up. That should be the exciting bit. And then it's not going to be DRS for a couple of laps. And then it's really annoying, because that's the bit where you think we could get some passing and overtaking. And then actually all that happens is by the time DRS is enabled, everyone's sort of separated out by a second and a half. And you miss that chance. So people will say it's gimmicky. They always do with anything new, but I'm here for it. I think it'd be
and people are saying DRS trains in the chat and things like that that I can see right now. And what I would argue is that DRS trains will naturally occur anyway. It's more the fact that I'm thinking the battle for the lead. If you have someone like Verstappen on pole and he just has an amazing first 3 laps and he's already clear of over a second, you may not have that anymore, and you might have more of a fight for the win than we've seen previously. And I think a small change like that could actually have quite big consequences. So I'm looking forward to seeing if that is a good thing or bad thing. I'm sure if it turns out to somehow make the racing much worse, they'll revert it.
I like the idea. I mean, we don't credit Formula One and the FIA a lot, but what I will say is I'm not against them trialing things like that, particularly doing it in sprints and stuff. I think it's a good idea to test bed things in actual races and stuff. I'm personally not against that. I like to see it rather than, we've seen in the past that elimination qualifying is a perfect example that I can think of, where it probably looks good on paper, they implement it and go, oh my God, this is terrible. Whereas if you actually have those moments where you can try it and see if it works. And I think that is something that Ross Brawn has spoken about in the past, hasn't he? So yeah, that them actually trying things and experimenting, I'm not against it. I know some people want it to be pure racing and all this kind of stuff, but then what is pure racing? Do we go back to 1950s cars with hay bales and never have any kind of changes? So F1 changes all the time. It evolves and new things come in. And equally, everyone just gets nostalgic about the things that they like. It's when DRS first got introduced, there'll be a lot of people that listen to this podcast that maybe have only just started watching F1 in the last few years. But as the resident boomer of this podcast and someone that's been around on F1 Twitter for ages, when DRS got introduced, it was like, oh my God, it's such a gimmick. Now you actually ask people about DRS, and a lot of people like it and think it's a very good thing because it's been there all the time and they like to see it. And it makes the racing more interesting, and that has been shown a lot. So, yeah. There we go.
I can't imagine an F1 world without DRS these days, to be honest with you.
No, it'd be terrible, to be fair.
That, yeah, we see that sometimes in full wet races, and look how close they are in those conditions. That was kind of the main big changes. There's a little bit of a change to Parc Fermé and sprints, which isn't particularly exciting. Accident damage allowance, they're basically simplifying how much forfeit allowance amount they get for each sprint, which goes up. And then technical and financial regulations, they unanimously approved some minor changes to that, which is not particularly exciting at all. So yeah, there you go. That I think is about it. Tommy, well, your final thoughts. Oh my God, what happened there? I literally couldn't even say the word. Your final thoughts, please.
My final thoughts are Abu Dhabi, prove me wrong and give us a banger.
Okay, all right. And I am looking forward to seeing Charles Leclerc dive up the inside of Perez at turn 5 on the last lap to take P2 in the championship. And I will celebrate it like it is Leclerc winning the world title. You can watch that live tomorrow on the WTF1 Twitch channel, WTF1 Official. And we will see you very soon for another podcast will go out on Tuesday. We've got Internet Best Reactions going out tomorrow and lots more stuff always to come. So yeah, thank you everybody. We'll see you very soon. Twitch chat will stay with you for a little bit longer. And yes, that's it. Goodbye.
Bye.